Hiring a virtual assistant is the best thing that I did for my life and for my business. I didn't even know all of what I was doing until I hired a virtual assistant. But I have to say, this was not an easy journey. This was not an easy journey because I was so used to doing everything the way that I was doing it. Not to mention, I was like, how in the world do I hire one? How do I pay for one? And all the things. Welcome back to another episode of the Keenya Kelly podcast. I am very excited to be here with you today to talk about hiring your very first virtual assistant and giving you all the details on what it is that I did and what I was doing in order to be able to do so. And so let's go ahead and get into it. But if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe and hit the like button on this video. And then if you're listening to this on the podcast players, make sure you give us a 5-star review because y'all be listening and watching and don't be taking no actions. And this is me saying, take an action. So I opened up the podcast talking about like how hiring a virtual assistant changed my entire life. But the first part of this episode is I'm going to talk about how difficult it was to even get to the process, right? So like, when you have always had a job your entire life, all you know how to do is have a job. You have no idea how to hire a person, how to find people, and then in your mind, you're thinking about the salary that you've always been paid or whatever. And you're just like, how in the world am I ever going to afford to hire somebody part-time or full-time to help me when I don't even know what I'm doing or whatever, you know what I mean? And so honestly, it took me a really long time before I ever hired my first virtual assistant. I didn't hire my first person to assist me until the end of 2021, And I've been doing this for way too long that I care to admit, just being honest. Okay. But I'm glad that I did. And so here is how I want to give you all the steps on how to hire your first virtual assistant. So the first thing you have to do is you have to determine who are you hiring and why are you hiring them, right? So are you hiring them to be a generalist virtual assistant, or do you want them to be your executive assistant, your right, left hand? It's like they're in on everything with you on all the things, or are you just giving them tasks to do? And the reason is because when you're writing your job description and you're thinking about the salary and all those things, you have to think about what is it I'm really trying to get this person to do, and how much are you going to be paying them? Okay. You may be saying to yourself, well, I don't know. Okay. So when I talked to a friend of mine a year ago, he had shared with me, he said, well, the first thing you have to do is determine what exactly do you want them to do? What do you need them to do? And I was like, well, I don't really know. And he said, well, first thing I want you to do is make a list of all the things that you do not like to do in your business. And I was like, well, isn't it kind of mean? He said, no, if you make a list of the things you don't like to do, and then you create a job description around it, once you actually post that job on job boards, people are responding to that position because they like doing that stuff. They have experience with that stuff and they don't feel like it's you taking advantage of them or whatever because they responded to the job posting, right? And so I said, well, I guess that makes sense. So I started making a list of all the things that I do, right? First, I made it, here's all that I do. And then I started just doing checks by all the things that I just do not enjoy doing. It was a lot of checks. Okay. And so as I was doing those checks, I said, okay, so now it is important for me to go now I've got to write a job description for a virtual assistant. And I was like, I have never written a job description before. So I went out to Dr. Google, right? And I was just job description for executive assistant, executive virtual assistant. And so then I started reading a lot of the different people's job descriptions they had posted on the internet. And I didn't copy any word for word or anything, but I did use them as a guide, right? And it just really helped me from writing out this absolutely terrible job description by just already using what works and then making it make sense for me and my company. Then I had to determine, how much would I be willing to pay? And my honest answer was I did not know because I had never hired an assistant before. So I just put that off, to last. And then I said to myself, okay, I am familiar with being able to outsource things overseas because I had my brand design business and all of my designers were in India and I had hired people in the Philippines and Pakistan and all that. And I said, okay, I know that Upwork.com works. And I'm also very familiar with onlinejobs.ph. Now, the thing that I do not like about onlinejobs.ph is you can post a job and you'll get 5,000 people to respond to a job posting and they have not even read the job description. It's it's wild when I think about onlinejobs.ph. But with Upwork.com, I know that I could set up my own profile and then I could post a job with all of my specifics that I want with the particular person, like my social media management, like I have to have, be fluent English, have 80% success rate with a previous clients, how much money they've already made working on Upwork. And I could ask them specific questions that they have to answer before they ever respond to the job posting. And I said, I like Upwork better. So then I went over to Upwork, created a job posting for an executive virtual assistant, and then I pasted the thing that I wrote out as my job description. Then when I did that, it went to like, what level was I looking for? We're looking for someone who was brand new, intermediate, or expert. And I said, well, I really want someone who's intermediate. They don't have to be an expert. So I did that. And then it asked me like, how long do I want them to work for me? And I was like, well, 6 months or longer or whatever. Then it said what countries. And I said, any countries. And so once you get to like the next screen, it's going to tell you, like, it's going to ask you, is this like an hourly pay or is this on a project basis? Now, here's what happens. When you click on hourly, Upwork is going to give you a range. It's going to say, here's the range between what most people are being paid as an expert for an executive virtual assistant. And so you're going to see a range. It could say $8 to $10. It could say 12 to 25, whatever, but it still gives you a range. And then you can choose on the low end this, on the high end this, and it gives you that range. Okay. And so when we were doing that, I saw a range of like, some people was like $5 an hour all the way up to $12 an hour. And I was just like, okay. And so then I was like, well, that sounds good to me because it's not very expensive at all for someone to really be assisting me with all these things that I do every single day in my business. And so then what happened was I posted the job. And then now you start getting a lot of people, responding to the job that are qualified. Okay. So from there, what I do is I understand that some people will be right. Some people will not be qualified or whatever, or we just won't gel well. And so in an effort to like maximize my time and not waste a lot of time with a lot of like video call interviews, because listen, if you get 100 people to respond, you cannot do interviews with everybody. And Upwork makes it a lot simpler because what you can do is once you see all the people that have responded to your job posting, then you can click on them and it will show you what they said when they responded to your job posting. If you ask them specific questions, you can read the answer to the questions, right? You can then look at all their success they've had on the platform. You can read all their reviews, and then you can begin having a conversation with them. So what I do is I look at everybody that has applied to the job and I just start going through reading what they wrote, right? If I like what I've seen so far, then I will click on shortlist. And that way it's saying, hey, this person is on my shortlist to look back at. And then what I will do is I'll have a list of questions that I want to ask them in addition to what was in the job posting, right? And then I will just say, hey, thank you so much for responding to our job posting. We have some additional questions for you. And so I send them another list of questions, right? And I just go through the process. But also if I see people who I am not interested in, I will just hit the down like button and that removes them from the job posting. And that way it's constantly just updating to just those people I have reviewed and shortlisted or those new people that have responded to the particular job. And so then as people are, I'm literally asking everybody the same questions over and over and over again as they're responding to the job posting. And I'm just asking them the same questions. Once I narrow it down to like however many is left that I really enjoy, then I will go to schedule video calls because everybody that is great in Upwork writing is not great on video in terms of like some people are like very intimidated, like, or they're very introverted and they have a hard time like articulating themselves or just being there with you on camera. But if someone is your executive assistant, they're going to be in some of your meetings with your team, right? Then you want to make sure that the person speaks fluent English because people may be able to write English, but not able to speak English. And you need to be able to speak to the person that is going to be your main assistant. And so we bring them on the video call and then now we're asking them even more questions. So like we've asked them a lot, but then we're giving them even more. We're nice and kind about it, but this is going to be a hire, someone who you're going to hire to work for you in your business. And so we just kind of walk through that entire process with that person. Once we narrow it down to the people we loved from that particular interview, those interviews, then we give them an assignment and we do a paid assignment. So I will say, okay, here's an assignment I have, and I'll give it to like 5 people and I'll hire each person for 1 hour. And I will say, and it'll be an assignment that I know they can do in an hour. I won't stretch their time limit, but it's like what I know they can do. And then once they have the assignment, I say, okay, I will pay you for an hour. When can you get this back to me? And then I'll see whatever they say they can get it back to me, right? Fine. And so then what happens is the people that actually met the deadline, right? Then we go and we review the work. And then once we get the work from them, then that's when we are moving forward with who it is that we're going to offer a position to. It may sound like a lot, but it's like, this is someone who is going to change your life. They're going to change your business. They're going to give you some of your time back. Instead of you having to do 100,000 things, now you get to do 50,000. They're going to do 50,000 and you're going to do 50,000. So you're still working and running your business, but you're not doing 100,000 things. You're only doing 50,000 things. So it's definitely worth kind of going through this process of being able to hire someone. Okay. But before you actually set a hire date for this person, it is so important that you have all the details laid out of what this person is going to do on day one. Okay. Because like, listen, when I first hired, I tried to hire so many people and like people have quit and all that. And a lot of it has been because we weren't ready. We weren't like, I didn't have my stuff together. I needed somebody, but I wasn't ready for somebody. And so it's just really, really, really important that, you know, you have it together of like what it is this person is going to be doing. And not only that, how you're going to train them, because your executive assistant or virtual assistant can do all the things you need them to do. But if you don't set them up for success by having a training plan, you know, without having a way you're going to teach them about you, about your company, about all these different things, then you're really setting them up for failure and you're setting your business up for failure, which I have done too many times than I care to admit. I'm ashamed to admit how many times I did this to like really, really good people because I wasn't ready, right? But, you know, you can get ready while you post the job and you're waiting for people to like respond. Now, I will say people are going to start responding to that job almost instantly. Okay. As long as it's a good job and a good rate of pay, they're going to respond immediately. So you don't have to hire them immediately, but they are going to respond immediately. Okay. So if you have not taken the leap, the chance to go and get yourself an executive assistant or a virtual assistant, then I would encourage you to start that process, because one of the things that I realized is that my business was going to be limited to me. If I'm the only person that was doing these in my business, then the business was going to be limited. But the moment I introduced other people to do other things was the moment that now I had more space, more opportunity to do the things that actually make the company run smoother and bring in more revenue to the company. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you will hire an assistant, get yourself on Upwork.com. This is not an ad. This is me just saying I love Upwork. I hired my entire team from Upwork.com, and it will change your life. So go ahead and do that. And if you decide to do this, let me know in the comments here on YouTube. And then if you're on the podcast, let me know on Instagram.
To listen to the Keenya Kelly podcast, just visit any podcast player out there, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. We are everywhere.